Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Sparkle and Shine. I'm so excited to be with you guys again. We've changed locations, not outside the Burton home, but just inside a different part of the Burton home because last time I just felt like it was a little bit too dark. And now you can see me. So we're in my kitchen. Just another cool thing about this devotional that we're doing is just, feeling comfortable in our homes together. And so thank you for joining me again here in my kitchen this time. So enjoy the background of the bottles and all the pictures that we get from family and friends and postcards and things. So yeah, this week is going to be a really interesting thing that I wanted to share. Something that I felt a little bit challenged by, just want to share a little bit vulnerably and come from a place of weakness. If you guys don't know me very well, I can tend to be a little bit of a perfectionist. And so when I want things a certain way and I want to present it a certain way, just because I want it to be excellent, but that can also present a lot of challenges, not only for myself, but for other people as well. And honestly, it doesn't leave a lot of room for God to work with me, because if you strive for perfection you try not to make mistakes, and mistakes is how you learn and how you grow. So just wanted to share that, just because I feel like this little devotional didn't come together the way that I wanted it to come together, but I just have a really cool feeling that I know that God is going to use it regardless, because he's God and he tends to do that, and that's why he's awesome. So what I wanted to talk about today is just about worship. And so you guys know, I know a lot of other young moms, when you are waiting for nap time to be over, or before, when I was nursing, you scroll through Instagram, social media, different things like that. There's a guy that I follow. He's like a pastor that I follow on Instagram called Aussie Dave. And a few weeks ago, he started talking about worship, and he talks about different things. There's different topics every single day. You guys should check that out if you guys want to. Aussie Dave, that's his little hashtag or little name on Instagram, so check that out. But he talked about worship, and I felt challenged because tomorrow I will be 10 years old spiritually. So I got baptized when I was 20 years old, started my journey with God. I had a background with a relationship with God. I grew up going to church and different things like that. But when I really, really made a decision to give my life to God fully was when I was 20. And I'm 30 now, so it's been 10 years that I've been making this decision every day to follow God. And felt really challenged by this thought about worship. And if you guys don't know, when you read the Bible, that word worship in different translations means different things depending on the context of worship. So what we're going to be talking about today is the context. It's the Hebrew word palach. It's spelled Pelach. And so what that word encompasses with worship, it just means to have a reverence for God or a service for God. And so I think that as the years has passed, if I can just speak for myself personally, my reverence for God, my respect or a fear for God has wavered and has changed because different things have happened throughout my life. And so I felt challenged by this, because I felt like no matter how old you are, spiritually speaking, or how long you've been following God, or if you're just starting off following God, I do think that it's something that we all could grow in, we all can be better in. And so I have some practicals, just like, last time. There's some practicals, which will be really cool just to think about. And I also have just some scriptures that I wanted to share with you guys. And so the scriptures that I decided to share are scriptures that I felt personally connected to. After I give you guys, later on, I'm going to give you the 5 W's of worship. And so we'll talk about that a little bit later. But we'll talk about how you can come up with your own scriptures to kind of go with your 5 W's. So for me, I have mine here. And we're just going to start off in Hebrews 12. And I have some little bookmarks, so we're going to go right over there. So Hebrews 12. And in Hebrews 12, verses 28 through 29, the Bible reads, "Therefore, since we are receiving a kingdom that cannot be shaken, let us be thankful and so worship God acceptably with reverence and awe, for our God is a consuming fire. And so I love this, just setting a precedence for us, like how we should worship God. And I don't know if you guys have ever noticed this word, but that word acceptably is an adverb. And an adverb is a word to describe how something is done. Just a little vocabulary lesson for you guys. But it describes how something is done. And so I love how it says, let us be thankful and so worship God acceptably. And so it's describing how we should worship God. And that word to accept, I don't necessarily think that we're thinking about what's acceptable to us, because obviously we can think whatever we want and, whatever, you know what I mean? But it's really, the way that I thought about it is having my worship be acceptable to God. And when I do things, in reverence for him or out of service to him, I should be thinking about, what does God think about this? Is he proud of me? Does he think that this is great? Does he even like this? Or, is this something that he could be proud of? I think just when you think about your worship, and when I think about my worship, that's just how I want to be moving forward. Just thinking about, okay, when everything that I do, because everything we do is an act of worship. The way we live our lives, the way we, live our how we are with our kids, how we are with our husbands, how we are with our friends and with our mothers and our fathers. Like, however we are in the relationships with our people is, an act of worship to God. And we represent God in that moment. And so that's just one thing that I just thought was really interesting. Like when I think about my worship to God, is it acceptable to him? And I want it to be, moving forward throughout these 10 years. I know that that's something that I've thought about continuing. Like, I want to make God proud, and one of the scriptures that I really, really love and I think about all the time, and it's kind of one of my theme scriptures when it comes to worship, is in Romans 12. And I know a lot of people know this scripture. We love it. And even at the top of it in Romans 12, it says like a living sacrifice, and when we think about worship, that's sacrifice to God, right? And the verses that I want to read is in verses 1-2, and it says, therefore, I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship. And so when I think about me worshiping God, my body, how the way that I dress, when I think about how I conduct myself, or I love how the scripture says, this is your true and proper worship, something that's true to you. And I love another thing how he says is in view of God's mercy. Like, the reason why we worship is because God has been so merciful to us. And God has been so merciful to me. Like, that's the reason I continue to worship him and think about him in respect, in a way of respect. And so, I know a lot of times, as like I said before, like we can get away from this, especially as moms, especially as women, we get caught up in our thoughts, and we could get so distracted by all the things in our life, like what we talked about before, making dinner, or how do I be a good friend? How do I hold my friend accountable in this time? How do I still be a supportive wife? Or how do I not compromise in my job and stand up for God? And how do I continue to be a light in the workplace? Or how do I be a light in the workplace now that we're online and we're virtual? So there's different things, different ways that, you can incorporate that. And so I came up with this little something to think about. Like, when you think about your worship, however many years it's been for you in your relationship with God, when you feel challenged about your worship, these are things that I've just thought about. And it's kind of like a checklist or like a check-in. You check in with yourself every few months, every few weeks, every few days, how often it is for you that you want to sit down and check in, like, how is my worship to God? Is it acceptable to him? And it's super simple, guys. It's just like the who, what, when, where, why type of thing. And so I thought about who is first. Like, okay, so when I check in with myself in my worship, who am I worshiping? Am I worshiping God? Am I worshiping myself? As a mom, am I worshiping my 1-year-old son? Am I worshiping my husband? Am I worshiping the people around me and being a people pleaser? Whatever it is for you, like checking in with the who. and making sure that you want to always be able to bring it back to God. The what, that can also be a challenge. What am I worshiping? Am I worshiping my job? Am I worshiping my role? What that is supposed to define me as, or what am I supposed to look like? Am I worshiping, different things? Like the what can be a number of things, but what is that for you? And you think about, another thing that you could think about in your what, like and this might be a little bit complex. So when you think about the what, your what is a thing, right? And it could be your lack of faith, or if you've been challenged in your faith, like have you been thinking about that a lot? Have you been giving into the lack of faith? Or have you been doing your best trying to work your way back up the little faith ladder? When you think about where, the thing that I love most about God is he's everywhere, right? So you can worship wherever you want, wherever you can experience reverence for God is a place of worship. So whether that's sitting in your kitchen, or in your backyard, or in the shower, or going on a walk, or in nature, or looking out of a window, wherever you experience reverence for God is a place of worship. And that's a place where it should be treated as like holy ground, right? And I love that. Like, it doesn't really matter where, like, just do it. You know what I mean? Sometimes we can make the excuse like, oh, it's not the perfect place, or it's not this perfect this, but God doesn't care about it being perfect. God cares about you just being there, right? And you think about the when. Another thing that I love about God is that it doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter when we go and meet with him, as long as we go and meet with him. And the thing that I also love about this is now in this quarantine, we have lots of time, right? And we can make we can make it so special. Like you could set a specific time, whether it's 10 o'clock at night, all the kids are in bed, you packed up all the dinner from that night, you put all your containers in the refrigerator, you swept your floor, you wiped off your countertops, and you've gone up for the night, and this is your special time with God. The only thing that I really want to encourage us with is making sure that we make that time special. Like it's a really cool thing to think about, like you're going to meet in this special place, or have this special time of worship with your special guy, which is God. So that's really cool. And when you think about your why, I know a lot of times as we continue in our relationships with God, the why kind of can get lost, and it can get confused, or it could get wrapped up in some other type of presentation, and then we lose faith that way, and so I think for me, when I'm doing a check-in, it always helps me to remember and to go back, why am I worshiping God? Because God loved me first. He sacrificed Jesus for me. Why am I worshiping God? Because he's God. He's done so many amazing things. Like you see it in the world around us. And yeah, the world is crazy, and this whole COVID thing, and with all of the political issues that are going on, it can be really hard to not look past those things. But God is still amazing, even in the little things. And a way that you can get back to the why is thinking about your gratitude, thinking about things that you're grateful for. And that can always remind you of who God is and why you worship God and why you serve God. So those are just my 5 W's: the who, the what, the when, where, and why, just to help me check in with my worship as I move forward in my relationship with God. And I have one more scripture that I want to share with you guys just to close out this thing, and just something that I felt as I was reading a bunch of scriptures about worship and different things like that. Just something that I was like, that's a really cool thing to share and end out with. It's in 2 Kings and chapter 17. 2 Kings chapter 17, and we'll read in verses 38 to 39. So it says, "Do not forget the covenant I have made with you, and do not worship other gods. Rather worship the Lord your God. It is he who will deliver you from the hand of all your enemies." And so in those moments where you're feeling frustrated, or you don't know how you could stand another day in the house, or how you can continue to give to your faith and it's been challenging for you. Like, I love this because it's just a cool reminder, like, do not forget the covenant I have made with you. Like, God has made promises to us. God has entered into this relationship with us, and not because of who we are or what we gave to him, because we haven't given very much, but because of who he is. And I love that. I love how he says, like, he reminds us, do not worship other gods, whatever that is, whatever the who is for you, whatever the what is for you. It reminds you, like, don't worship those things. Like, remember me and worship me, right? And then it goes on and it says, rather worship the Lord your God. It is he who will deliver you out of the hand of all your enemies. And so I love how God challenges us, like in our worship, and then he leaves us a promise. He challenges us and then he promises us that he's always going to be there and he's always going to be the one to pluck us out of those situations that we seem to always get ourselves into. And so thank you guys so much for joining me today. I hope that this little talk and chat about worship encourages you. I hope it encourages you to stop and to think about where you stand before God and your reverence and your service to God. And I hope it encourages you to continue moving forward and not to forget who you worship, why you do it, and just to continue to love God. So thank you so much for joining me in my kitchen. And I hope that you guys come back and hang out with me next time. So thanks, guys. Thanks for coming.